The seventh book of the Harry Potter series showed that Rowling could be as ruthless as George R.R. Martin when it came to killing characters, though the string of tragedies began in Goblet of Fire, when Cedric was killed by Voldemort as no more than a spare. Afterwards, each novel was marked with a death. Harry lost Sirius in the fifth book, a death which remains one of the most painful for fans, and Dumbledore in the sixth novel, Half-Blood Prince. Every death was memorable, prompting Snape mourners to quote always at every opportunity. However, despite the pain many endured over these losses, particularly in the Battle of Hogwarts, there are lives to be grateful for. For every beloved character that died, another lived. Considering who Harry could have lost deepens the scope of the war. It was a narrow victory, but fans remain thankful that the author decided to show other favorites mercy. The first character I want to talk about is Hagrid. Seeing Hagrid killed would have been more wrenching even than Lupin. While Lupin was a father and a former friend of James, Hagrid was as much a parental figure to Harry as anyone. Before Sirius came along to play the role of reckless godfather, Hagrid was the bumbling, occasionally irresponsible father figure who made you love him the more for his flaws. He gave Harry advice, friendship, and a safe place when he didn't feel he had anyone else. He taught the Golden Trio the value of friendship, despite differences, and pulled them out of a number of scrapes. Where else would Ron have turned for his slug problem? The author even considered Hagrid a parental figure. In the first book, Dumbledore and Hagrid represent two types of parents Harry needs in his life. While Dumbledore provides wisdom and protection, Hagrid offers fun and care. He's more approachable than the headmaster, and he's Harry's introduction to the wizarding world. When Harry visits Diagon Alley to shop for supplies and begins to learn about wizarding life, Hagrid keeps the boy company. Like any parent, he accompanies Harry, advising him on what to purchase, as well as preventing him from more wasteful purchases. He also gives Harry his first connection to the world. Hedwig, Harry's beloved late owl, is one of the best birthday presents Harry ever receives. That Hagrid remembers Harry's birthday at all, even going so far as to bake a cake, says everything. The next character I want to talk about is McGonagall. McGonagall was tough, but she was nothing if not fair. Further research into her backstory reveals just how much she gave up to become a teacher. It was a sign of her dedication to the role, and Minerva made it clear she was both loyal and duty-bound. When Snape took over as headmaster, it would have been easier for Minerva to leave. Instead, she remained to protect the students. While she couldn't outright oppose Voldemort, she could argue in defense of her subjects and assure no one was too badly injured. When Harry arrived, she even led the rebellion against Snape's office. She put herself in front of Harry to protect him. She was willing to risk her life and her job to do what was right. If remembering McGonagall's stance against Voldemort wasn't enough, her courage against Dolores Umbridge solidified admiration for McGonagall in the fifth book. No one is likely to forget her curt, "Have a biscuit, Potter." She makes it clear she'll do everything in her power to see Harry become an Auror, with or without Umbridge's approval. Umbridge sacks Trelawney, attacks Hagrid, and drives even Dumbledore from the school. McGonagall's defiance again risked her career, yet her loyalty to Harry proved her commitment to her students. Finally, she had a fun side, a love of Quidditch, which stood out in her otherwise stern demeanor. She notes she won't be able to look Snape in the eye if the Gryffindor team loses. She gives Harry a gift that's almost as good as Hedwig, a broomstick, offering with this a position as seeker on the house team. It's easy to forgive Minerva for putting Harry in detention when Rum remembers that she pushed him into his budding Quidditch stint. The next character I want to talk about is Luna Lovegood. Thankfully, many of the younger characters were left intact. Luna, as a member of the so-called Silver Trio, brought a unique perspective to the series. Acting as everyone's conspiracy theorist buddy, but nevertheless well-meaning, Luna's views meant she could see that which others couldn't. Though she had an innocent air, she recognized when someone was being unkind. She was also loyal to her friends and played a role in shaping Harry's acceptance of others. Seeing someone as sweet and childlike as Luna be killed would have been too painful, and the potential in her character going forward is intriguing. The fourth character I want to discuss is Neville Longbottom. Every member of the Silver Trio is important, and Neville no less so. He has a rocky start in his youth. His clumsiness, forgetfulness, and general lack of talent in magic make him a target for bullies. Though the Golden Trio try to help Neville, even they aren't as nice to him as they could be. Seeing Neville grow and come into his own during the last few books is satisfying. He didn't become talented because he had skilled parents. He became talented through a combination of determination and hard work. Though he struggled, he attended every DA meeting. Under Harry's mentoring, and through his own perseverance, he was able to bring his magic up to par. What's more, Neville, even in his infancy, was not incapable of excelling. He had an aptitude for herbology, a skill which carried over into his adulthood when he assumed Madame Pomfrey's role as the herbology professor. If seeing him begin to flourish wasn't enough, recognizing how loyal he was to his friends was heartwarming. He also went out of his way to protect his fellow students from the Carrows, the Death Eaters that were teaching at the school. He became black and blue for refusing to use the torture curse on first years. His bruises were worse even than Seamus's, indicating Neville fought harder than anyone against the new regime. Hearing of his antics against Snape almost makes one wish there was another version of Deathly Hallows focused solely on Neville's leadership of the Silver Trio. Speaking of the Silver Trio, the next person I want to talk about is Ginny Weasley. Ginny sometimes gets a bad rep among the fandom. She has to compete with not only Ron and Hermione, but Luna and Neville. Some might have called her the less developed member of the Silver Trio, but it's important to note the role she played in Harry's life. When he lost everything else, she was there for him in even a way his friends couldn't be. She didn't judge Harry when they needed to dispose of the Half-Blood Prince's book, and she offered a stable element in Harry's life. Throughout the remainder of his 6th year, Harry is able to be normal. He has a girlfriend, and together they share some sweet, if normal, summer afternoons. After 6 hectic years, and a war to come, Harry needed the time Ginny gave him. Had Ginny been lost in the battle, there's no telling what would have happened to Harry. Could he have recovered from losing her, after losing everything else? As Rowling put it, Ron also needed to remain whole. Losing a sister would have left Ron changed in a way that might have been too tragic for fans to sit through. Ginny promises Harry a happy future, while also sticking around for Ron. Moreover, she can act as a friend to Harry in a way that Hermione can't. She can be tough, mischievous, and she loves Quidditch. Having this common interest gives Harry another friend besides Ron to discuss Wronski feints with. The next character I want to discuss is Draco Malfoy. Malfoy could never be described as lovable, but there's something to be said for a good redemption arc. Malfoy torments the Golden Trio throughout their school years. He seems to have no redeeming traits, though fans eventually learned even Malfoy had lines he wouldn't cross. When ordered to kill Dumbledore, Malfoy is unable to do it. For all his past cruelties, he's not a murderer. Instead, the reader sees him as a frightened teenager, and Harry has to pity him when he's whisked away into the keeping of Voldemort. It's apparent he's as much a prisoner as Harry when the Golden Trio is trapped at Malfoy Manor. When he's asked to identify Harry, Harry suspects Malfoy recognizes him. Yet Malfoy claims he's not sure. In that moment, he actually defies Voldemort to protect Harry, even if it's not outright. He knew the risks, and yet he lied to Bellatrix's face. It was the true beginning of his redemption arc. While most fans could never like Malfoy, except in a number of unusual fan fictions, many would have felt deprived if Harry and Malfoy couldn't have exchanged that quiet nod at the train station 19 years later when they were both seeing their sons to school. While never friends, the pair were able to respect one another, and Malfoy's character changed for the better. His prejudices lessened, and he was able to grow into his own person outside the shadow of Lucius. Voldemort had shown him his father's ideal world, and he wanted no part of it. The seventh character I want to discuss is Mrs. Weasley. There's an emphasis put on Harry's various father figures, but one should remember that Molly played the role of mother in Harry's upbringing. She sent Harry a jumper, like he was a member of the family. She invited him over for summers. She sent him sweets and took care to see that he was well fed, even when her own family was struggling. She comes to see Harry as another son. Moreover, she disagrees with Harry's father figure, Sirius. With Molly and Sirius at each other's throats, Harry even gets to know what it feels like when your parents fight. Molly offers Harry a dynamic he wouldn't have known otherwise. He finds siblings in the Weasleys, almost a second home at the Barrow, and a mother in Mrs. Weasley. The home feels cozy and warm, representing everything Harry didn't have and everything Molly knew he needed. To my next point, I want to discuss Ron Weasley. He is Harry's first friend, their bond beginning on their first trip to Hogwarts. They share a compartment by chance, only to grow closer as the hours wear on. While Harry tells Ron about himself, Ron tells Harry about the world he's about to enter. They discover they share a love of sweets. Ron begins Harry on his chocolate frog collection, and they share exasperation over the bossy Hermione. Harry never had a friend before, being the outcast at his Muggle schools. Ron gave him the chance to be an ordinary boy, while also cementing Harry's idea that friendship matters more than money or status. The Golden Trio was too integral to the books to be broken up, and losing his best friend would have been a cruel blow. After losing several parental figures, Harry needed to keep Ron, and the connection Ron offered to a surrogate family in the Weasleys. The boys were like brothers, being raised together during summer holidays by Molly. This is a foundation Harry needed in his life when everything else had gone wrong, and Ron gave it to him. My next person I want to discuss is Hermione. As indispensable as Ron, Hermione acted as Harry's other best friend, albeit of a more responsible nature. It's no secret that the boys might have failed several times over without Hermione. She was nearly a protagonist in her own right, pulling Harry out of trouble when he floundered. She suggested Harry start the DA. She solved the riddle of the potion in order to reach the Philosopher's Stone, and she assisted Harry in training for the Triwizard Tournament, pointing him to useful spells he would have overlooked. While Harry's success required bravery and skill, Hermione's intelligence made up any difference. It would have felt wrong to lose her. The Golden Trio seems as integral a part of the world as the Four Houses, and fans deserve to see the success Hermione achieved when she became Minister for Magic. Though the deaths which pepper the series were painful, there's comfort to be had in those who survived. Losing the trio, golden or silver, or other parental figures in Harry's life would have been all the worse. Moreover, seeing how those surviving characters flourished post-war offered hope after so much tragedy. What character are you relieved lived? What character do you feel shouldn't have been killed? Let me know. And if you enjoyed this, please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening.